Welcome back. Welcome back. I'm super excited to get into it. I hope y'all have been networking with your peers, chatting, connecting, linking, vision building, all of it, all of it. For now, we're actually going to learn how to build a successful resume with Wells Fargo. So let me go ahead and introduce these folks. We have Tiara Spencer, okay? And as a senior talent sourcing specialist for Wells Fargo's targeted sourcing team, Tiara leads the recruitment efforts for two of Wells Fargo's diversity and inclusion programs, Glide Relaunch and the Career Development Program. She also supports early talent recruitment in the form of historically Black colleges and universities and Hispanic serving institutions. Partnerships through collaborations with external diversity organizations like the Thurgood Marshall College Fund and Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. Tiara is a 2017 graduate of Harris Stowe State University, the only HBCU in St. Louis, and is a proud TMCF alum committed to paying it forward through mentorship, advocacy, and humility. In addition to her day to day career, she serves as a student mentor with the St. Louis Regional Business Council, okay, and a board member, excuse me, a board member for the East St. Louis Community Tennis Association, which helps introduce the sport of tennis to youth and adults in underserved communities, y'all. That's amazing. Okay. Then we also have Felicia Bolton. Felicia has enjoyed a 11-year career with Wells Fargo. She joins Wells Fargo's through the WIM Analyst program as a financial analyst. Her previous roles within Wells Fargo's include financial analyst and senior financial analyst in finance and performance management consultant supporting digital and automated investing. In her current role within talent acquisition, Felicia is a DE and I advocate, partnering with internal and external stakeholders to help identify and engage with diverse candidates in support of Wells Fargo's DE and I strategy. Y'all, with that being said, I want you to give a lot of love in these emojis and in the chat and let them know how excited you are. And thank you so much. Have a great session.
Thank you all so much. I'm going to share my screen. Give me just a second. And if you, Felicia, maybe you can let me know if you can see it. Oh, wait, I can see it right there.
Yep, you're good to go.
All right, perfect.
All right, well, everyone, again, hello, and we are pleased to be here with you all this afternoon representing Wells Fargo and to provide you with some tips and tricks to help you have success on building your resume. As we know, we are now entering the peak recruiting season for those internships and full-time opportunities post-graduation. So if you want to go to the next slide here. So just to give you a rundown of what we'll be going over with today, again, welcome. This is a safe place to ask questions. No question is considered a silly or dumb question. We ask that you please utilize the chat or the Q&A feature for any questions that you may have throughout this presentation. The topics that we'll be covering are the recruiting process and how to decipher the job posting. We'll then go over what is a resume, the best tips for formatting your resume, some of the top resume mistakes that we see when we're reviewing resumes, and also the key components that should be in your resume. Once we go through those, we'll then just have a brief Q&A session, as well as sharing with you all some resources that will help you stay in touch with Wells Fargo, as well as learn about some of our different early career opportunities that will be opening up soon in the coming months. So you just heard our brief bios, but I will again introduce ourselves. I am Felicia Bolton. I am a business execution consultant at Wells Fargo. As my bio stated, I recently just celebrated that 11-year anniversary, which I can't believe it has been 11 years, but time flies when you're having fun. Definitely super fortunate to have such a long career at Wells Fargo, joining immediately after finishing grad school and starting my career in finance, and then going into data analytics. And now I'm in HR. So I know you all are probably thinking that is a crazy career path. And the reason why I was able to have that crazy career path is because I tailored my resume to meet those opportunities that I was interested in. So I'm very excited just to be here with you all to make sure that you're getting a jump start on making yourself marketable for those opportunities that you are looking for. And now I will turn it over to Tiara just to share a little bit about herself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Felicia. Yeah, so I am a senior talent sourcing specialist with Wells Fargo. I've actually been with Wells Fargo for a whopping 8 months now. So still pretty new to the organization, but not new to talent acquisition. I've been in the talent acquisition space for about 6 years, getting my start in university recruiting, which is still my heart, even though I do more mid to late career recruiting now. But a huge component as to why I was able to join this amazing organization last year is because of how I was able to tailor my resume to align to the job title that I currently have. So really excited to share some fantastic tips, and we can go ahead and get started. So, before we dive into our workshop of creating or updating a resume, it is important to understand the entire recruiting process so that you know what to expect once you've submitted your application. Now, here we have the different phases of the recruiting process, and depending on the position, some steps may be in a slightly different order or not used at all. Now, this, however, really gives you a good idea of the many steps involved in the recruiting process for Wells Fargo, which may at times cause it to be a bit lengthier. And then you can see, first we start with the intake phase. So that's where the recruiter connects with the hiring manager to understand their hiring needs. Then we post a position on the internal career site for a minimum of 5 days or 40 applicants for our traditional recs. That said, for the 2024 internship recs, the applications will be open for around 5 months, which is amazing. So you have a lot of time to get to apply this year. And then from there, we have the screening and resume review and pre-screening phase in the middle. And that's where recruiters identify the most competitive candidates to forward on to the hiring manager. And then finally, we have the interview phase, and that's followed by the selection phase. And then, of course, the offer phase, which is everybody's favorite part. So now I'll talk a little bit about deciphering those job postings that you'll see. So now that you know a bit about how the process works, it's important that you understand the positions that you're applying for as well. Now, before applying, just please ensure to review or be sure to review the job posting carefully just to make sure that you understand the scope of the position and the required and desired qualifications. So starting from the top, we have the job title and level, which is determined based on what is required to perform the duties of the position. We also have the job description, which gives you that understanding of general duties and responsibilities. Then, of course, we have the very important required qualifications, which is that's those experiences or credentials that are objective, quantifiable, and necessary to perform the core functions of the position. So as you may know, if candidates don't at the very least meet the required qualifications, they can't move forward. So example, there may be a role that requires 4 or more years of customer service experience. So that is a hard, stern requirement for that particular position. But then we go into the desired qualification, which are those additional skills, competencies, experiences, and credentials that can be used in the selection process to identify applicants who are better qualified to perform in that position. For example, a desired qualification could be a manager preferring financial services industry experience as well. Now, while there may not be a disqualifier for the applicant, an applicant doesn't necessarily have to have it, but it would be considered a bonus. So that desired qualifications are kind of that cherry that could really help to set someone apart. And then, of course, you have those job expectations, which are the attributes of the position that a job seeker or applicant would need to agree to for consideration for hire. So like the work hours, the work location, travel percentage, and things like that. And then just it's important to note that in order to be the most competitive candidate, you want to be sure to possess not only the required qualifications, but as many of the desired qualifications as possible and have that showcased in your resume. Now I'll hand it back to Felicia to discuss the importance of resumes.
So you've been out there on LinkedIn, the different job boards, and you finally found that job posting that catches your attention, you feel that you are qualified for. So as the next step? The next step is now you have to submit that resume. And we all know that essentially the resume is the presentation of your work experience on paper, right? It's like a snapshot for the recruiter to know who you are and what you could potentially bring to the table for their company and the role that you're interested in. Your resume should be clear, professional, direct, easy to read, and effective. And we bolded the easy to read portion because keep in mind, recruiters are getting hundreds to thousands of resumes at any given time for a job posting. So you want to make sure that your resume is easy to read. And that is because if you go to the next slide, when we are reviewing resumes, we're only spending about 15 to 20 seconds going through that first initial review. So if your resume is not clear and concise and easy to read, in that first 15 to 20 seconds that we spend, you're just gonna get tossed to the side. And you may have been a great, phenomenal candidate, but if it took us too long to actually see if you met the basics, you're just gonna go into the next pile, we're just gonna go on to the next person in the stack. So again, keep in mind, the average time that we spend looking at your resume on the first initial pass, this is not us going back in deeper to review you later. This is just going through the pile of what we get, 15 to 20 seconds. So you literally have 20 seconds to grab that recruiter's attention before they toss you to the side. I see everyone saying in the chat that that's short. Yes, it is short, but keep in mind, hundreds of resumes are getting reviewed at any given moment. And now I will pass it over to Tiara to begin talking about that formatting to make sure that you make it past that 20-second review.
Wonderful. Thank you, Felicia. And yes, it is short, but when you're looking at one thing, stare at one thing for 20 seconds. It feels a lot longer, I promise. But yeah, so I can definitely share some of those resume formatting tips because, of course, you want to make sure that it's easy on the eyes when you're looking at it. So before we start with the parts of the resume that Felicia will dive into, we can go into some of the key aspects of formatting. So with that, recognizing what Felicia said, that 20-second point, you want to use bullet points with short, concise sentences rather than lengthy paragraphs. Additionally, having key phrases standing alone and bulleted will really help the reader to see the important information at a glance, just really catch you in. And then you also want to use action words. So words like prepared, managed, developed, monitored, and presented, those will really cause your resume to stand out. Moreover, incorporating keywords that have been picked by the hiring manager or straight out of the job description really helps to tie your relevant experience to the role at hand. And then, of course, you want to have a logical flow. So, flow and just a good use of design elements. So like those bullets, the bolding, all the font is all the same color, black preferred, white space, things like that. They'll really help to make your resume easier to review and stand out. You really want to just strive to be clear and concise because the sole purpose is to have a recruiter contact you for an interview. And then remember, a resume is a professional document and therefore should not include any personal details except your name and contact information. Also, you do not have to include references on your resume. If an organization is wanting to know your references, they'll ask you directly. So leverage that reference space to further showcase your skills. And then the job description really it tells you what you need to know about the role. So don't be afraid to use it as a guide for tailoring your resume. And then finally, make sure that there are no errors on your resume and proofread, proofread, proofread. That is incredibly important. Okay, and just recognize that your resume is your brand, right? It's think of it as a sales brochure for you, really. You'll want to highlight your strengths and what's most relevant because it's really relevant to the potential employer. You also want to put the strong and most relevant points first, where they're more apt to be read. Doing this will hook the reader and it'll really give them the opportunity to dive further in and be reeled even further in as they continue to review. And then you want to emphasize your accomplishments, right? So to emphasize that, you should always use numerical icons to quantify your results. So things like percentages, dollar totals, and numbers that really stand out in the body of a resume. It's also very important to read the job description closely and use those keywords, like we mentioned before, directly from the posting, as long as it's honest as well. Want to make sure that that's in there, and then include them with the bullet points in your resume. And along these same lines, I would recommend tailoring your resume for every position that you apply to. Just being really intentional with your resume will absolutely pay off. Okay, and then before I hand it back to Felicia to talk about the parts of the resume, let's talk about some common resume mistakes. First, typos and grammatical errors. Those can be a major red flags for recruiters because you really want your resume to be as grammatically perfect as possible. We understand there might be one, like a typo or so. You're human, that's fine. But just know, depending on who's reviewing your resume, they might read between the lines and draw some not so flattering conclusions about you, like, oh, this person doesn't write well, or this person doesn't care, or they don't pay attention to detail. So it's just a simple fix, just a quick spell check, and also save it as a PDF. So that way, if there are any track changes, it won't register. Also, having incorrect contact information is a miss. That could potentially happen. You know, you can have an amazing resume, but if your phone number is transposed or your email address is missing a letter, you're not going to receive the calls that you're waiting for. So, as we said earlier, remember to proofread even the smallest details. Then another potential area that you want to be mindful of is not stating the employment dates, because the what, the how, and the when are still very important. And employers need to understand not only what you've done and accomplished, but when you achieve those accomplishments. And then another mistake is not providing enough information. Funnily enough, it can be just as challenging as providing too much information. So just despite what you may read or hear, there are no real rules governing resume length. That doesn't necessarily mean that you should start sending out 5-page resumes, of course, but you usually need to limit yourself to a maximum of 2 pages. But don't feel like you have to use 2 pages if one will do. And then conversely, don't over edit your resume simply to make it conform to an arbitrary 1-page standard. Because if the experience that you want to share is relevant, keep it. It's amazing what kind of like formatting changes can do for space. So just think about that. And if you do feel like you have a lot of information, try playing around with the format and it might make it look a little better. And then, of course, attempting a one-size-fits-all resume should also be avoided. Whenever you try to develop a one-size-fits-all resume to send to all employers, you're almost always going to end up with something that employers will bypass, because employers really want you to write a resume specifically for them, and they expect you to clearly show how and why you fit that specific position in that organization. And then finally, mind your embellishments and graphics on the resume, because we said we need your resume to be visually appealing to an extent, but if it's wall to wall, text featuring 5 different fonts, underlining, colors, bolding, etc., it most likely will be too distracting to the employer, and they might miss some of the key accomplishments that you had. So just know a good best practice is to show your resume to several other people before sending it out, maybe connecting with a friend or a professor or the career services office. That could really make all the difference. And again, you want this to be an easy read and let your accomplishments do the talking. Now I'll toss it back to you, Felicia, for the resume parts.
Thank you. And just to quickly piggyback on some of the tips that Tiara just shared regarding that contact information, if you are actively looking for a job, make sure that your voicemail box is not full. And in my past experiences, I actually had candidates that I was trying to call and schedule for interviews, but couldn't get through because their mailbox was full. So they never got the message knowing that we actually wanted to follow up with them. So in addition to providing that contact information, make sure that your inboxes and things are not full, that you can actually get those messages through. And then also on the formatting embellishments, make sure you're sticking to a font that is readable for all, meaning that if someone has a diverse ability and they're reviewing your resume, they can actually review it, because some of the fonts that people use, they're real pretty, but if someone has a diverse ability where maybe they can't really read fonts that have lots of curves in the letters, they won't be able to clearly decipher your resume. So keep in mind that it may be someone with a different ability or a diverse ability that may be reviewing your resume. So you want to make sure you're using font and text that is readable across all people. So jumping into the parts of the resume, these again are just the basic components that you'll usually use. Depending on the opportunity that you're applying for and what your relevant experience looks like, you may interchange some of these components. But essentially you have that contact information, your objective or summary, your experience, education, and then your honors and activities, which can also include any special skill sets that you have that are relevant to the role. So your contact information should include your name, phone number, email, and your LinkedIn URL. It should be located at the top of your resume. Avoid using nicknames and make sure that your email address is professional. I stress, make sure your email address is professional. Do not use the email address that you use for all your friends or your social media chats or your spam folder. Make sure you have, I recommend having a separate email account just for the professional things that you'll be sending out. That way it doesn't get lost with everything else that you may be receiving. Also, in regards to including your address, you can include your address or you can do something different. For example, on my resume, I don't have my physical address, but for me, I just list that I am located in the greater St. Louis area. That way, the recruiter still knows where I'm located, but I'm also not giving that personal detail out about myself. Next, we have the objective. So when it comes to including your objective, you want this to be a concise statement of what you want to do. You want to be specific. You want to tailor your objective for the job that you are seeking. Again, this is why we recommend when you're applying for positions, make sure you're tailoring that resume to that role, because you don't want the objective to be speaking to a role that's not even in scope of what you're applying for. If it is not included or tailored, readers may also assume you're looking for work similar to your most recent position. Now, if you're applying internally, the objective may not be as relevant, but it is key to have when you're looking to apply externally. If you're applying internally, instead of doing an objective, you may just want to do a summary of your key strengths or experiences. So going back to the summary of your strengths, if you're not doing the objective, again, it should be a concise statement or bullet points summarizing the experiences or your area of expertise or technical skills that, again, are relevant to the job posting. This is essentially you making your strongest arguments to why that recruiter should hire you. And also it repeats the key information that is located in your resume. Or you can use it to highlight the skills that you have that are in that job posting. If you recall, Tiara stated that you want to make sure that you have those required qualifications, but also those desired. So your summary of strengths, this is a great way where you can highlight some of those desired qualifications to help you stand out from the crowd. Next, you have your experience. Please keep in mind when you're capturing your experience, you want to use reverse chronological order. So your most recent experience shows first. You want to include the name of the organization you work for, the title of your position, and the dates of employment. When it comes to describing your work responsibilities and emphasizing your achievements, you want to make sure you're using bullet points with short sentences rather than lengthy paragraphs. Because again, as we stated earlier, you want to be concise and be able to easily grab the recruiter's attention. Make sure you're using action words and verbs. So for example, instead of saying responsible for administering, use administered. Or instead of helped write reports, you can say wrote a report. Or instead of saying I was on a committee, if you led that committee, then say I led X, Y, and Z. Remember, using key action words and verbs are what will help you stand out from the crowd. And again, you don't have to be too specific. This again is just a summary to grab the attention. You can go into more detail during the interview when you land that interview from having such a great tailored resume. The next part would be your education. Similar to your work experience, you want to include your most recent information first when you're listing your education. You do not have to include your graduation year unless it is key for applying for that position. For example, if you're applying for early talent programs, one of the ways we quickly read out candidates is if we can't determine if their graduation date falls in line with the requirement for the role, because a lot of our internships require that you have a specific graduation date. So again, that is again why it's key to first decipher the job posting to make sure your resume has all those key components. You want to include your degree level, whether that is your associate's, your bachelor's, master's, PhD, your JD, whatever it may be, along with your major, the institution that you attended, and your minor or concentration. You can mention your academic honors. So if you were cum laude, magna cum laude, summa cum laude, honors college, things of that nature, you can include those. However, we don't recommend necessarily including your GPA, especially if you weren't in that top percentage of your class. Because sometimes including your GPA, if it's lower across other people are applying, it shouldn't count you out, but depending on who may be reviewing your resume, it could count against you. So we recommend just not including your GPA at all, but just making sure you include that relevant major, the degree you're shooting for, and that graduation year and date. Also, if you're a recent college student, I know a lot of times it's like, should I include my high school? We recommend that after your freshman year, no longer include your high school information. That's really only relevant in that first entry point to college. But now that you're a seasoned college student, the high school information should not be included in your education section. Next slide. The next section of your resume is your honors and activities. This is the part of your resume where you can really highlight some of the things that are unique to you that will make you stand out amongst the hundreds of other people that are in the applicant pool. So some of the key things that you can include in this section are any special skills that you may have, whether that be technical, interpersonal, communication skills. This is where you can highlight them. Any awards that you may have received that are relevant to the job posting, key memberships and organizations, and any leadership roles within those memberships. If you have completed any professional development training or licensing and certifications, this is where you want to highlight that. Computer skills, any additional languages that you may be fluent in, as well as any volunteer activity. And oftentimes people really miss on including that volunteer activity, because one of the great things about including volunteer activity is it shows the potential employer what your interests are outside of being a professional and what are your ties to the community. Because a lot of employers will want an employee who's also interested in giving back into the communities in which they serve. I know personally for Wells Fargo, we are big on volunteering in the communities where our offices are located. So if we see someone with that same similar passion, we may determine that it may be a better fit compared to someone else that may be interested in that same opportunity. So again, never shy away from highlighting some of those things that make you unique from everyone else in the applicant pool. And now I'll pass it back over to Tiara.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And then, yeah, now that Felicia has covered those parts of the resume, here's an example of a resume using a summary rather than an objective. We can also see that this person here, Jane Smith, used some other tips as well. So you can see that she used action words or verbs such as design, program, tested. She also used keywords likely directly from the posting like Java, C++, and she also quantified her experience and scope of support. So this is definitely a key example that you can potentially leverage. So we've talked about using numbers in the tips. Now we just go a little bit further. So it's really an important concept. So let's take a look at some examples. So instead of saying wrote news releases, what about saying wrote 25 news releases in the 3-week period under daily deadlines? Can you kind of hear how that switch just sounds just a bit more in depth, and it kind of shows the gravity of the work that's been done? Another example, instead of met sales goals, say consistently exceeded sales goals by 10%. Like that just rings a lot better. just know that numbers really highlight your accomplishments and help the hiring manager understand the complexity of degree of difficulty that was really involved in the task, and it highlights the impact that you had within the organization. And another way to show your impact is to present your accomplishments in terms of money if it's relative or if it's relevant. So, like money you saved or revenue that you've generated for your team or organization. For instance, if you say identified and recommended a new service provider that cut the company's costs by 15%. That's like, wow, oh, they made a huge impact, right? Or cross sold products that increased business by $250,000 or managed a department budget of more than $50,000. So being able to add numbers or quantify as applicable is always going to be really helpful when putting together your resume. And then in addition to thinking about the numbers, we should also be thinking about time. Because we've all heard the saying, time is money, but when listing your accomplishments, think in terms of saving time, making time, or managing time. For example, if you were to say, assisted with twice monthly payroll activities to ensure team members were paid on time. That's huge, right? Also, recommended a new process that decreased average customer wait time from 10 minutes to 5 minutes. That's incredibly significant. So just think about how you can incorporate time into your resume as well. And then remember, sell yourself because we know that we shared a lot of information with you today, but we really just want you to remember that the goal of the resume is to get you an interview where you can share more details about your experiences and describe how you can help the organization achieve its goals. So be concise and professional, of course. As I previously mentioned, it's okay to have more than one resume. You want to target your objective and qualifications to the role that you're considering. Also, recruiters are not mind readers, so don't be afraid to state the obvious if you think that it's relevant. And then keep your resume current and be sure to review it at least once a year to update as necessary. I think someone actually mentioned in the comments, this is something that I do as well. It can be helpful to keep a living document that you use to keep track of key projects that you take on, or even keep track of standout scenarios that can be added to your resume, or they can be used as great talking points for your next interview. Just think of that as your opportunity to just stay abreast of all the amazing things that you're doing that you want recruiters and hiring managers to know about. Okay, so before we go to Q&A, I want to share some of the awesome opportunities that we have available in our early career space, including our banking and sales area, STEM, and enterprise and control functions. I know someone had asked about if we take software engineering applicants, and we definitely do. So we would absolutely be open to reviewing your application at one point. I'll just leave this here for a little bit if you want to just take a look. And then on the next slide, we just have some resources on how you can stay connected with us. All right, and then this is how you can stay connected. So for just more complete details around our university programs, you could always go to our university program site. It's really as simple as going to Google and typing in Wells Fargo University programs, and it's all there. You can also join our talent community there as well if you want to be kind of kept in the know of new developments. We also have our military recruiting space as well. And then we also have a Beyond College webinar series that occurs monthly. And the next one is going to be August the 24th. And it's titled Charting, a Path to Graduate School Successfully. So it's really a great opportunity to listen in to some of our key leaders of Wells Fargo and get some really great tips on how you can prepare for life outside of college. All right, so with that, I will hand it back over to Felicia for our Q&A and wrap up.
Thank you. And then, Tiara, if you would like, if you go back to the intro slide with our faces, so if they didn't get a chance to scan those QR codes to get to our LinkedIn pages, they can take that chance now. We do invite you all to find us on LinkedIn, add us, and stay connected. We would love to be a resource to help you as you continue to navigate to get to those next opportunities. So please don't be shy. Add us. Promise we'll accept your connection request. But yes, let's jump into some Q&A. I saw that the chat was flowing. So the first question, how should one go about reaching out to recruiters on LinkedIn? So Tiara, do you want to take this one since you do a lot of our LinkedIn sourcing?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really very simple. Just connecting. Hi, my name is so and so. I am a blank major. It's literally like your elevator pitch. If you're familiar with the term elevator pitch, it's really just a quick introduction. I'd love to connect. If there are any opportunities, feel free to keep me in mind. I get messages like that rather frequently, and a lot of the times, just like absolutely, I will certainly keep you in mind. Also, I would ask that you let me know of the positions that you're interested in, and I could potentially be a conduit between you and the recruiter to ensure that you're considered. So it's just simple, as simple as that. Just send a message and you'll get a response. And if you don't, then you'll reach out to another recruiter. All right. Any other? Oh, I see. Should you always include, oh, there we go. Should you always include a project section? I feel like I don't have projects that are strong enough to include. You don't necessarily have to include a project section if you don't have any relevant projects. A lot of the times, depending on the role, they might like seeing something like that, but the class assignments could also be something that you could leverage. Just you want to be able to make sure that you can communicate that clearly in your resume.
How do applicants without previous internship experience in that field stand out with their resume? So that goes back to what we mentioned earlier about those desired qualifications. Those are the things that will help you stand out. So while you may not have a lot of internship experience, you may have certifications that other people may not have. You may possess, sometimes in our job postings, especially for internships, we look for people that have strong interpersonal skills or communication skills. So you can highlight those as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have a whole running list of internship experience. You can have those desired qualifications that other individuals may not have. So again, that goes back to those volunteer activities, the memberships, leadership positions that you hold at organizations, any certification classes that you're taking, technical skills. If you're good at coding, SQL, VBA, Excel, highlight those on your resume. Don't feel like because you haven't had maybe 2 or 3 internship experiences, you're slacking, because you're probably not, because you probably gained a lot more in those limited experiences than someone who may have 5 or 6 jobs listed on a resume that may not even be highlighting them as relevant to that particular opportunity.
Should we satisfy all the requirements to apply to a job post? That's a great question. The required skills or the required qualifications, absolutely. And a lot of the times the list for required qualifications isn't that long. It's really, sometimes it's just as simple as 4 years in this particular space or in customer service or something like that. That's fine. But the desired skills, if you want to be as competitive as possible, you'll want to satisfy as many of those as possible, because the more desired skills that you have in combination with those required skills will ensure that you have that visibility and that opportunity. I think we're taking one more question. I know we went by kind of quickly. All right. What are some underrated things people don't add to the resume but can actually be helpful? That is a fantastic question. Let's see. I was going to say, going back to what Felicia said about the volunteer hours or the volunteer support that you do, that is incredibly helpful. let's see. And then as far as like underrated things, Felicia, what are thoughts that you might have?
Um, I would say not including your membership at organizations. And I only say that
Mhm.
because the organization can be an extension of your network. So sometimes we're reviewing a resume and we'll see organization, we're just like, oh, we've had a lot of great other candidates and employees from that same organization or ties to the organization that has come through. So by default, you're connected to them and they're kind of like your silent sounding board because we know that, hey, this organization produces excellent candidates. So by default, we're thinking like you may potentially be another similar product of the organization. So I think sometimes people forget to include those relevant organizations because it's kind of like a solid network when it's on your resume if it's well enough known for that particular company.
Mhm. Awesome. I think that was our last one. Let's see. Yep, and then we didn't have any more slides, so we definitely want to thank you all for joining today. I know we didn't get a chance to get through everybody's questions, but you have our LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with us there. Um, to learn more about our internship opportunities, just go to that university program site for Wells Fargo, and you'll be able to see when everything is available. We're really, really excited, and we hope to see you in our talent pool sometime soon.
Yay! Thank you
Mhm.
so much, Tiara and Felicia. Y'all give them so much love in the emojis and in the chat. Thank you so much for sharing all these very important parts of the resume and how to just make our own toolbox even more prepared for recruiting season. So, right now, what we're going to do is get into our giveaway question. Are we ready? Is the chat ready? It's giving y'all are ready. Okay. So, how many seconds do recruiters typically spend reviewing resumes? Ooh, I think I saw the person. They were quick with it. Hold on. Bethany. Yes. Bethany, congratulations. You were on it. You were on it. The Color Stack team will be reaching out to you about your giveaway. With that being said, thank you so much, Felicia and Tiara, and thank you so much for sharing and spending Fam Friday with us. Thank you so much. Y'all make
It was,
sure to
I was gonna say thank you for having us.
yeah. Y'all make sure to connect with both of them and connect on LinkedIn. Send that thank you note. You know what I said. So thank you so much again for spending the Friday with us, all of us. So shout out to the Wells Fargo team. We are actually gonna get into our next session, which is going to be technical interview prep with Asana, y'all. So give us a second, and then we're gonna come back with the next session. Oh my God, are we feeling pumped? Are we feeling pumped? I'm so excited. Okay, I will see y'all in the next session.